So today we're going to paint some Space Wolf Wolfen, and for these I wanted them to look slightly darker than the rest of the Space Marines to give them to try and help with that feral look. And we're going to start with the flesh first. So initially I started with Bugman Glow, and for the next coat I've got a 50-50 mix of Bugman Glow and Keslev flesh. And I'm using this to primarily try and pick out the muscle groups, and I'm not trying to cover the entire muscle. I'm trying to cover the edge of the muscle where two muscles are going to get close to one another to help define and separate the muscles. And next, in the same areas, we're using Keslev flesh by itself this time. And the reason why I've done a colour which is in between the original colour and the Keslev flesh is it helps to smooth out the blend of the transition between the colours. Now we're moving on to the hair, and first off I used corn red, and once the corn red has had time to dry, there was a 50-50 mix of the corn red and Flaskets yellow, and I've applied this with the side of the brush just to try and pick out the individual grains of the hair. Next I've used Flaskets yellow by itself, and this time you want to be a bit more sparing with how much of the yellow you want to use. You're just trying to pick out those uppermost highlights and give some level of texture to the colours. With all of the flesh areas and the hair areas dry, we now want to apply Agrax Earthshade onto both the flesh and the hair. And here's a quick look at what the flesh and the hair looks like once you've had that last colour applied. Now we're working on the armour. So firstly I made sure that I had a good base coat of the Fenrisian Grey, which may take more than one coat. And next I put some Rust Grey onto the lower parts of the armour, so this shows where there's slightly less light into these areas. For the darker parts of the armour I also after this did a 50-50 mix of Rust Grey and Mechanicus Standard Grey. For the upper parts of the thigh plates, you can't really see it on this particular miniature because it has some decoration there, but for the other miniatures in the squad, some Ulthuan Grey was applied for the highlight. You can see in this part of the video that the metallics have been painted. So for the silvers I just used Mechanicus Standard Grey followed by applying some Null Oil. I didn't use any other highlights beyond that because I wanted to keep the colours dark. And for the golds, if it's just the trims, I just painted it gold and left it as it was. However, if it had more detail for the areas with the gold on them, I applied some Agrax Earthshade over the gold afterwards. And here I'm painting the belly plate, and I'm painting it with corn red, and after the corn red, Carroburg Crimson was applied onto the area, and this tones the red down some. For the claws on the miniature, I initially started with Upshapti-Bone. I then used Agrax Earthshade on the part of the claw which is near the flesh, and a very small amount of Pallid Witch flesh on the opposite end just to pick out the claws. For the ice blades on this miniature, I started off with Corax White first to make sure there's no contaminating colours there. And once that was dry, I watered down some Lothorn Blue, roughly 2 parts water to 1 part paint, and applied the blue and left it to dry. Depending on your own preferences, you may want to use a second coat of this just to finish this off. Now for the fur areas, I'm going to make a separate video for the fur. And also I have a video for how I've done the axes, because some of these miniatures have axes, and that would be a separate video. if you want to look at that. Also remember to look in the description below for the finished miniature. If you like the video, remember to subscribe, click the notification bell, and also share the video with your friends.